Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me. I'm really excited about today's video. My daughter called me and said that my grandkids needed a bag or something that they can take to daycare that's a little bit bigger than their normal backpacks that they usually take. These days they're carrying their nap time blanket and their pillow and an extra set of clothes and all those things that you need at daycare. So they needed a little bit bigger of a bag. She knows I like to make things like that, so I came up with something and I think it turned out really cute. So this is the one that I made for Ace, and I think it turned out really, really cute. You can see it's got this nice boxy bottom. It's about 8 inches boxed on the bottom, and it's pretty wide. You can get a lot of stuff in this. I used an outdoor fabric from Joann Fabrics just to give this a little bit more durability. I used some fusible fleece. Well, at daycare, they need to be able to fold this up and put it in their little cube that they have. So it had to be soft and pliable and something that they could moosh up without destroying or that got too bulky for the daycare. But I also used a quilting cotton on the inside of this one, which I thought added a lot of fun, and it's kind of unexpected when you open it up. So it looks pretty traditional, and you can totally reverse this. You can turn it the other way. I added a cam snap, which obviously won't work if you reverse it, but you can reverse this, and I think this is going to work out really, really cute. So I filmed this one earlier, and of course my video didn't work, so I went ahead and made a second one for Evie, and again I used outdoor fabric from Joann's, and I thought this one was really, really cute. I love pink and lime green. So this is hers, and again it's got that nice boxy bottom, and on the inside of hers I did, turn it this way so you can see the pocket, I did the lime green polka dots and white. So I thought this turned out super cute. These are really, really versatile. You could simply change the size of the beginning rectangles and make these any size you want, more of a purse size, a tote size, a beach bag size, whatever you want. These are sort of a jumbo tote. And this is also the same method I used when I made my first Easy Press totes. I just made it a little bit taller. So join me over on the sewing side and we will start making our own tote bags. This is really fun. It's a beginner friendly project. This isn't difficult at all. It's all straight seams, straight lines, and it's a lot of fun. So let's get started. Okay, so here's what you're going to need. You're going to need 2 pieces of your outer fabric cut to 22 by 18. And I have put fusible fleece on the back. You don't have to put fusible fleece, but if you wanted to have a little bit of structure, I highly recommend it. If you want to do a little bit of quilting, you can go ahead and do that. And then I have my lining pieces also cut to 22 by 18, 2 of those. And on these, I put a cotton or a woven interfacing on the back of each of these. And again, that's optional, but it does provide a little bit more structure to the bag. And then I have my pocket piece, which is cut to 8 by 17. And this I just eyeballed and cut it out of one of the scraps. You can make it whatever size you want, but imagine that it's going to be folded in half either this way or this way, depending on how your fabric is or your scrap. But you do want to make it double the size that you want the pocket. So that's the pocket, and again, mine is 8 by 17 if you're following this these directions exactly. And then I have a yard of this webbing, and this is again 36 inches, 1 yard, and that's going to make our 2 handles. So the first thing we need to do is address the handles, and again I've already got the interfacing on my project. So if you haven't done that yet, you want to go ahead and pause the video and put your fusible fleece on your outer fabric and your woven interfacing on the lining fabrics. So I'm going to move this up so you can just see one at a time. And we're going to put our handles 6 inches in from each side. So I'm going to use my ruler here. Here's the 6 inch from this edge, and I'm just going to clip that into place. And we're going to measure in 6 inches from this side as well. And make sure that your handle is not twisted. Oops, you know what? I forgot. Cut this in half. have 2 handles. You just want to cut your yard in half. All right. So where were we? 6 inches in from each side and clip into place. And 6 inches on this side. Make sure you're not twisted. Clip into place. And then you can use this one as a template for the second one. And if you want your handles longer, by all means, just make them longer. But again, I started with 1 yard, so these worked out pretty good for me. So I'm just going to use this one as a template and line these up. Clip into place. Make sure it's not twisted. And clip this one into place. If you're using your bottom one as your template, make sure they're lined up. All right, so you want to take this over to the sewing machine and just lightly tack that down right along the edge just to hold those handles into place. Okay, so both handles are tacked into place. You might want to double check, just make sure that they are not twisted. Everything looks good. And we're going to set those aside, and we're going to grab one of our lining pieces and our pocket. First thing we're going to do is address the pocket. We're going to fold it in half, pretty sides together. And again, it doesn't matter which way you're folding it. If you're folding yours this way, based on how your scrap works out, that's fine. But you want to fold it in half, and then you're going to sew 3 sides closed, leaving an opening to turn it right side out. Now, whichever way you're orienting your pocket, you want to leave that opening where the bottom's going to be. So for me, I'm going to leave it right here, and I'm just going to mark that with a fabric pen. So I'm going to sew here, back stitch, don't sew between, sew here, and back up, and close it, leaving this folded edge alone. Okay, so I have sewn this closed all the way around except for that opening that I left that's going to be on the bottom of my pocket. I'm going to take my scissors and just trim off these corners, making sure I don't cut into the seams. And then we're going to turn it right side out through that opening, pushing those corners out. You might want to use a chopstick or a purple thing or a point turner, whatever works for you. I like to use a bone folder, also a paper crafter, so got lots of bone folders around my studio. And just want to make sure you get all those corners turned out nicely. I also like to run it along the seam, just push those seams out. And once you have that into place, your bottom opening should kind of fold in on itself. You want to take that over to your ironing board and iron the pocket flat, and then you're going to stitch across what's going to be the top edge. That's just a top stitch, it's just decorative, so you don't really need to do a short stitch. You can do like a 3.5 or whatever you want to do, but you're just going to top stitch right across there. Okay, once you have your pocket top stitch, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I top stitch right along that top edge. The bottom is still open. We're going to fold our piece in half. If you have a directional fabric, you want to make sure that this is the top. We're going to fold our pocket in half. You might want to check if you have a better side than the other that you want to show. I think I want the green dog to show. I'll turn it this way. And I'm just going to eyeball it like this. And I'm going, you guys can totally measure it, but I'm going down about 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. You can put it wherever you like, whatever works for you. And I'm just going to pin this into place. Now you're going to take it over to the sewing machine. You're going to back stitch and stitch down one side across the bottom, which will close this opening that we have. and back up and back stitch at the top again. So back stitch, down, down, back up and back stitch. Okay, so we've got our pocket sewn into place. About that string. If you want, you can stitch another stitch up here if you want to make a double pocket, but I'm just going to leave one big pocket for mine. So the next thing we need to do is grab our other outer fabric, and again, if you're using a directional fabric, you want to make sure your tops are facing the correct direction. This is the top of the pocket. Your pattern needs to be facing accordingly. And you're going to line these up, pretty sides together. And again, I put some woven interfacing on mine. That's optional. You don't have to do that. You could use light interfacing. You could not put interfacing on the lining. I just like the way it looks when it's finished. So we're going to clip this all the way around. And on the lining piece, we're going to sew down. Again, back stitch at the beginning and the end. So sew down, across. You're going to leave an opening. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. It doesn't have to be that big, but you need to leave an opening that you're going to turn this whole bag through, which is going to have that fusible fleece. So you want to leave it a little bit big, at least 4 inches. So we're going to sew down, up, back stitch. Don't sew between here, back stitch, pick it up, go to the end, back up, and back stitch, leaving the top open. So down, up to the line, skip, line, back up. Now we're going to do similar on our lining pieces. We're going to put them pretty sides, or I'm sorry, outer pieces. I'm going to put those pretty sides together, make sure those handles are tucked down. And we're going to match those up and clip. You guys can use whatever seam allowance you want to use on this, but be consistent. I tend to use the width of my presser foot for most of my seam allowances, but whatever you're comfortable with, you can use for this, but just be consistent. Use the same seam allowance on both pieces of the lining and the outer. Okay, so on your outer fabric, we're going to do the same thing we're doing on this one, except for we're not going to leave that gap. So you're going to sew back stitch, sew down, across, back up, back stitch. So all 3 sides totally closed on the outer fabric. Make sure your fabric's facing up the right direction. This is your opening, your handles. You're not going to sew on that end. This one down, up to the line, don't sew, line, and up. So meet me back here and when you've got that done. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is work on boxing our corners, and for that I'm going to use a 4-inch square. You can, if you have a 4-inch square ruler, this works great. If you don't, you can cut out a 4-inch square, or you can just measure it with your ruler. But what you're going to do is measure from your seam line, not the edge of the fabric. You're going to measure from the seam line. You're going to measure 4 inches over, and from the bottom seam line you're going to measure 4 inches up, and you're going to make a square on your fabric. And I'm just using my fabric pen. You can use anything you want. And again, we're measuring from the seam line, so I'm putting that right on the edge of the seam line and this seam line and marking a 4-inch square. And then you're just going to take some scissors, and I recommend using scissors, not a rotary cutter, because it's really easy to overshoot when you're using a rotary cutter. And we're just going to cut that square out. Same thing on this side. You want to be pretty precise. All right, and now we're going to do the same thing to our lining. Here's our opening up here. Here's our opening right there. And we're just going to measure from the seam line 4 inches up. Same thing over here, measuring from the seam line And you can see I've cut my inner facing slightly shorter. I just like doing that to keep it, keeps the bulk out of the seam. But that's up to you. You can cut it exactly the same if you want. And we're just going to cut this one out. Okay, I think for me this is the best way to box your corners. It just gives you a much more consistent look than trying to use the templates or just folding it and then measuring. But what you're going to do is open this up and you're going to push one seam to the left, one to the right. You're lining up that bottom and the side seam. You're going to put a clip in it. And you're going to pull this out and make sure everything is nice and straight. And clip that one. Same thing on this end. So our corner's like that. We're going to open up the corner like this. You want to look and see what way this seam is going so it's not twisted. So it's going that way. I'm going to put that one that way. That one that way. Nest those seams together. Clip it. Pull everything out nice and straight. Make sure you don't have any puckers in there. So it looks something like this on the bottom. Here's our opening still. So that's our lining. I'm going to do the same thing on this outer. You're going to open up the corner. One to the left and one to the right. Pin. Straighten it up. Make sure everything's lined up. Over to this side, open it up. And again, I'm looking to see what way that one's going so that I don't have it flipped. If you get it flipped, it's not a big deal. You'll probably never notice it. But I try to get it straight. Line everything up. All right, so this one is our outer fabric with the fleece. Whoops, pulled my clip off. So you're going to take this over to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch right from the edge of the fabric, back stitch at the beginning and the end, from the edge of the fabric all the way down straight to the other end. And again, use the same seam allowance on all 4 of your corners. Okay, so it should be looking like this. We've got our corners all sewn and boxed. You can trim them up if you have any loose threads. And here's my lining. Still have that opening in there. It's supposed to be that way. So we're going to take our outer fabric and we're going to turn this right side out. Starting to look like a bag. You're going to push those corners out. Get everything nice and neat. Some threads. So this sort of looks like a bag already, an unlined bag. All right, so that's our outer fabric. Now we're going to take the lining fabric, leave that wrong side out, and put your inner bag or your outer fabric inside this one. So it looks kind of like this. All right, so you're going to want to make sure your handles are on the outside. They're in between the outer fabric and the lining fabric on both sides. So they should be facing down in between like that. And what you're going to do is go over to your side seam, and you might want to look to see which way you had it going up here. And you're going to push that one that same way. You're going to line it up with this side seam. Push that one the other way. And we're going to clip it. All right. So So we're going to turn it around and go to the other side and do the same thing. You want to make sure you get the tops of these fabrics lined up together. I'm looking to see which way I push that one. That one's going that way. So I'm going to push that one that way. This one this way. Lining those seams up. Give it a clip. All right, and once we have those two in place, now we're going to work our way around the rest of the bag. I like to start from the corner and go to where the handle is. Make sure that handle is straight. That fabric nice and tight, and clip where the handle is. Oops. Tighten it up to the next handle. Make sure it's straight. Make sure everything's lining up. Clip that one. And then if you want to put any in between, you can certainly put as many clips as you want. And we're going to turn around, do the other side. Check, make sure that handle is pointed straight down. Clip that one into place. Same thing here. And again, we're lining up the top fabric and the side fabrics, or the side seams. Okay, so once you have it all clipped, it should look like this. You're looking at the fusible fleece. You're looking at the back of your lining fabric. Your two pretty sides of the fabric are facing each other inside the bag. So what we're going to do now is start at a side seam. So one of these sides, you're going to stitch all the way around the top of the bag and back where you started. So started a side seam, whoops, started a side seam, so all the way around and back where you started. Okay, so I have sewn all the way around, and just for good measure, when I go over the handles, I back stitch. If you didn't, you might want to go back and just throw a couple extra stitches. That just reinforces those handles and gives them a little bit more extra strength. But that's totally optional. You don't have to do that. I just find I always do that without thinking. But now you're going to open up the bottom and gently pull the fabric through. So you're going to turn the bag right side out through that opening that we left in the lining. And just go slowly so you don't rip your seams. And once you have it all turned out, again, you're going to want to take your point turner and make sure all of your corners are nice and neat and popped out so that you have a nice boxy bottom to your bag. And you want to do that on the outer and the lining. All right, so we've got those all, corners are all nice and squared off, point popped out. So all that's left is we got to close this little opening that we left, and you can see if you kind of just pull on it, it naturally folds in on itself. I would recommend taking it over to your ironing surface and giving it a press, and then just stitch that closed on the sewing machine. If you're, you know, really picky and worried about the inside bottom of the bag, you can hand stitch that and do a ladder stitch so that it doesn't show at all. Or you could use some hem tape and close it that way, but I seriously just stitch it closed. Nobody looks at the bottom of the bag that closely. Okay, so you can see I have stitched mine closed right there, and what we're going to do next is just tuck it inside the bag. So it's a lot of fabric we're messing with here. Just gonna wrestle it back inside the bag. So you're just going to stuff everything back in there, and then you're going to take it over to the iron and you're going to press that top so that it's nice and smooth. Be careful pressing around these handles. They will melt if you put the iron directly on them, at least if you have the polyester blend ones like I do. But go ahead and just press that down. And then once you press it, you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and just top stitch all the way around the top. And that's just going to hold everything into place. You can see our pocket inside. This is taking shape nicely. So I'm going to give it a press, and then I'm going to do my top stitching. Okay, so all around the top. We have the handles. You look inside, we've got the pocket. And again, if you want to separate this pocket, just sew a seam right down the center or however you want. You can straighten this out. Be careful when you iron that you don't handle it too much until it cools, because there is that interfacing, and when you reheat it, it reheats the adhesive. So I need to repress this, but I haven't had time to do that yet. So next up, I'm going to add a couple cam snaps. This is totally optional. You don't have to do this, but this is a nifty little tool to use if you don't have one already. We're going to fold the bag in half and establish where the center point is, and I'm just going to put a pin in here just to show me where that is. And we're going to measure down about 1 inch from that center point and put a little mark with our fabric pin. I'm going to turn over and do the same thing on this side. At our center point, 1 inch. And then all you do is, I can take my pen out, take the little pick that comes with the tool, and you're going to poke that right inside your little dot. And then your cam snaps come with 4 pieces, so you can put whatever color you want. I think the green might be cute. So you're going to need 2 of the tack pieces. It'll look like that. I'm going to put that in. And then there's 2 different backs. You just need to make sure, it doesn't matter which one you put where, but you just need to make sure you have 1 of each. And let me show you what that looks like. So you have one that looks like this and one that looks like that. So you're just going to put the back of one on there. You're going to put your clamps right over the tack and squeeze. And then we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on this side. And I just want to make sure everything's still lined up. Line my handles up. See my little dot that I put in there, and I can feel that snap is right under there, so we're still unlined. Poke a hole. Put my snap through here. Right through both fabrics. Put the other side on and clamp it closed. And that's it. We've just made a snap closure for our little tote bag. I think these are so cute. I made another one for Ace earlier today, and actually this is the one I did for the video, and the video got lost, but I think this one turned out so cute and fun. It's got the striped fabric on the outside and the dragons on the inside. So this is a super versatile pattern. I think you could use this for just about anything. You can change the size just by changing those rectangles that you start out with. You could make the handles out of the matching fabric. You could make it out of the lining fabric, a different fabric, whatever you want. You don't have to add the cam snap. You could leave this open for more of a beach bag type bag. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So if you like this tutorial and you decide to make some of these jumbo totes, I would love to see it. Tag me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook. You can find all the links to my social media channels in the description below this video, as well as all the products that I used. Be sure to like and subscribe and share the video. Don't forget to click that little bell icon. That will send you a notification every time I put out a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, never stop making.